Today is January 15th, 2020. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview of Pete Elkins in Copan, Oklahoma. Sir, where were you born?
I was born in Stillwell, Oklahoma.
When's your birthday?
December 10, 1939.
Who is your father?
William Edward Elkins.
And your mother?
Nicey Ellen Smith Elkins.
Nicey?
Nicey, N-I-C-I-E.
Okay. You go through school in Stillwell?
No, I didn't. We left there real young.
Where'd you move to?
We moved to the boondocks down in South Saw. My mother and dad separated, and I was about 4 years old, I guess. We moved to the Arkansas River bottom down in southwest of South Saw.
Okay. Where'd you start school?
I started the school at a country school named Bluff in southwest of South Saw. And it was a one-room schoolhouse. We had first to 8th grade, and we had 12 kids in school. So we had one school teacher.
What was her name?
It was a he. Kirby Carr was the guy's name.
Kirby Carr.
Kirby Carr.
Mm-hmm. How did he handle all the grades in one room?
You know, it's kind of hard, but he would start down with the lower. I was there in the first and second grade, and he would start down just giving us things that we needed to do. And the older kids sometimes did have them to come back and tutor us. Mm-hmm. And but they did it. I seemed to learn more there than I ever did in a larger school.
Yes. Okay. Now, did you live on a farm? Did you live in town?
We lived on a farm.
Okay.
We actually, it wasn't ours, and I don't really know how the setup was, but we had 40 acres, and we would just do a little farming. My mother got married when I was remarried when I was about 5 or 6, I guess, to a guy that just got out of the Army, World War II. And he was taking some kind of schooling on lineman or something like that, and that was the only $90 a month, I think, and that was the only income we had. And we just, something like 40 acres on the farm, and we just raised stuff for us and the stock we had to eat. All we had was a couple of milk cows and a couple of horses and mules.
What chores do you do on the farm?
I did just about everything. I milked, and I actually, at 6 and 7 years old, I did some plowing with the mules, and I'd have to walk a lot closer behind them, so the check lines would keep trying to fall down, but it was, I milked, and of course we had gardens, and fed the hogs, and we shucked corn, did everything that we needed to do on the farm.
What was the name of your mule?
Gosh, I don't remember the names of the mules. We had one mule, Joe, that you could put him with another mule, and it worked just fine. You do that sucker by himself, like doing some cultivating in the garden, he would run away. He would have spread stuff everywhere, all over that 40 acres before you could get him nailed down. But with the other mule, he just worked real good.
Okay. What was your favorite chore?
I guess milking was the favorite.
What was your least favorite chore?
I don't know. I can remember the good times, can't remember the bad times so much.
Describe your house on the farm.
Okay, our home down there we had the living room, the kitchen, and maybe one bedroom. There was 4 kids, and we were very poor people, and that was about it. Mm-hmm. It was an old house, you know, no paint or anything on it, and so.
Was the house warm?
No, it was not warm. There was no insulation and no interior walls or anything. It's just the outside boards and everything. And we had we'd crank up the old wood stove, and it would keep the entire house warm because the house wasn't very big to start with, but you'd have to stay pretty close to it most of the time.
Now, how far from Sallisaw was the house?
About 12 miles. We were west about 5 or 6 miles, and then south another 5 or 6, where the Arkansas River and Sallisaw River come together down in that area.
How often would you get to town?
We'd go to town about once every 6 months, and what we'd do, we would just load up the wagon and ford the Sallisaw Creek and go across the pastures to town. And just about the time we moved out of that area, my stepdad got a car, and they opened a little hamburger joint in Sallisaw. But we never went in there, but maybe once or twice during the while we were there, and it wasn't very long. And then he came to Bartlesville. Some of my other family was in Bartlesville. He came up and started working for Millstead Band Lines, and then we moved to Bartlesville.
When did you move to Bartlesville?
We moved to North Jennings Street. It was a duplex. Gaddis was the name of the person that owned the duplex, and it's right where the boot store is of Webster's welding shop. You know, there's I don't know if the boot store's still there or not on Jennings, but 116 North Jennings, I can remember that. First day I went to school, I was in the 4th grade. I went to Lincoln. It was in March. I was barefooted. They made me go home and get shoes. So my stepdad took me down to Chester's used shoe store on 2nd Street. Got me a pair of shoes, went back to school.
Mm-hmm. Went to Lincoln School?
At Lincoln School.
Who was principal at Lincoln then?
A guy named Stewart.
Leslie Stewart.
I don't remember his first name, but
Yep.
Mr. Stewart.
He was there when I went to Lincoln.
Was he? He was there a long time. And
yes.
Actually, he was there when my wife's brothers went there, and they're up to 10 years younger than I am. So.
Okay. Then you went to Central?
I went to Washington in the 6th grade.
Okay.
And then Central.
Okay.
And then Carl High, and I left Carl High after sophomore and went into the Navy.
Okay. Who was your favorite teacher?
In the 7th grade, there was a gal at Central by the name of Mary Falkenstein. She was a brand new teacher, and she was, I would sit up close to her desk, and I delivered newspapers early in the morning, and I would doze off every once in a while. She'd reach down and pat me on the head to wake me up.
Why was she your favorite?
My what?
Why was she your favorite?
I don't know. I guess she just paid more attention to 2 or 3 of us that were the lesser, what do you want to call it, the kids in school, you know, the poor kids.
Yeah.
She didn't cotton to the snobby guys so much.
Okay. So you left in the sophomore year?
Yes, I left just after I turned 17. I left after the sophomore year, just into the junior year.
Okay. And you joined the Navy?
I joined the Navy.
When did you join the Navy?
I was a radioman.
When? When did you?
I went in the Navy in January the 14th, 57. Got out December the 8th, 67.
Why'd you join the Navy over the Army, Marines, or Air Force?
There was another guy that talked me into joining the Navy with him. I don't know why, but we went down and joined the Navy. We went down on Friday afternoon to join down at the recruiter's office. Sunday morning at 6 o'clock, we was on the bus going to Oklahoma City. We got down there, he flunked the physical and came back home, and I went to San Diego. So that's the only reason I can think of.
How'd you travel to San Diego?
They flew us out there.
You did? Had you flown before?
That's the first time.
What did you think getting on this airplane going?
It was spooky, and every time I would fly, once we got up there, it wasn't bad, but when we would start down, my head would stop up. I mean, I couldn't hear anything for a couple of hours after we got on the ground.
Okay.
And I don't know why it would do that, but boy, my head just felt like a big rock.
So you got off the airplane on the bus. What happened when you got to the center?
Well, as I remember, it was real early in the morning. We went out to the complex where the barracks were and everything, or to the distribution center, I guess, where you get all your clothes and everything. And we just got in line to get everything. And the haircut, the clothes, and it's almost like a one size fits all. and it wasn't really too bad. We spent all night doing it until daylight anyway. And then we went to breakfast and then just started the normal boot camp stuff, telling us about how great the Navy was and everything and what we need to do to keep it great.
Tell me about boot camp.
About what?
Boot camp. What'd you do?
Boot camp was more of a hurry up and wait than anything for the Navy. We did a lot of marching, and we did not do a whole lot of calisthenics like the Army and the Marines do. But we did do some with our arm, you know, but we did not do a lot of physical exercising. We went to a lot of classes on shipboard. We had a ship there called the USS Never Sail.
Never sail.
Never sailed. It was embedded in concrete, and it was the only commissioned ship in the Navy that had never been to sea. But they'd take us on there and teach us different things about different parts of the ship.
Okay. Now, did you request sea duty?
No. Out of boot camp, we just got orders to go to different places, and I went to radio school in Norfolk, Virginia from San Diego. And then after the radio school, I went to the USS Calvert in San Diego.
How long did boot camp last?
It was about 8 or 9 weeks. We got out of boot camp about the middle of April.
Okay. Now, did you request radio school?
No. In boot camp, you go through these series of tests, and whatever you seem to catch on to best, that's where you went. And I, for some reason, I got the Morse code down pretty good. I've never heard it before, but I could remember different characters, and that's how I got radio school.
Okay. So tell me about radio school. What'd you do?
Radio school was, it was real stressful. You sit there and they just, different characters of the alphabet they would send, and you'd have headphones on. And then a few minutes later they'd send them back over again, and you had to remember them. That was tough. Mm-hmm. But it turned out not bad. But that's mostly in radio school. That's all we did, just going to class 8 hours a day, learning Morse code and things like that.
Did you learn semaphores?
No. That's one thing I did not do. When I was on the ship, I went up to the signal bridge a lot to help the signalman, because their flashing light is Morse code also. And I was real good on the flashing light, but the signalman copied everything by words. The radioman copied it by characters, because we would type it. Those guys have to write it out longhand. The signalman would receive it, and then his buddy would tell his buddy, and his buddy'd write it down. And I was pretty good, but Morse code, the skivvy waving we called it, was just, I couldn't get it.
Okay. And radio school lasted how long?
I went there in April, and I left in October, so it was 6 months or so.
October of 57?
In 57.
Okay. And you went aboard the?
Went aboard the USS Calvert.
USS Calvert.
APA 32.
What kind of ship is the Calvert?
It was an attack transport ship.
What division were you assigned to?
OR division, operations radio.
Okay. What'd you do with the Calvert?
Well, I was just a radio operator copying Morse code. Most of the time back then, most of the stuff was Morse code. The teletype was just coming in. And I would copy Morse code, and then things that worked to our ship. We would copy a fleet broadcast out of San Francisco, and any message come to our ship, we would give it to the write-up person, and they'd write the message up and deliver it to whoever they need to on the ship.
Okay. Where were your quarters on the ship?
Quarters on that ship was about midship, down 2 or 3 decks. And that ship, as I understand, was an old converted liner, because they got it in World War II real quick. And it was a smooth riding ship. When in your younger days or your lower rated days on the ship, you were involved in work details. When they'd have something they needed to do, they'd just tell every division on the ship to supply 4 or 5 guys. And we went to the yards in San Francisco in 58, and we carried pig iron out of the bilges and stacked them out on the pier, and there was 3 or 4 rick of pig iron out there, and each little ingot probably weighed 40, 50 pounds. And then they had that down in the bottom of the ship. How does a ship stay afloat with all that weight down there?
What'd you have all that in the bills for?
For buoyancy.
Oh,
That was a smooth riding ship.
oh, for ballast or?
Yeah,
Okay.
for the ballast.
Okay.
And we went to Westpac or Far East, I guess, in summer of 58.
What watches did you stand on the ship?
What watches? Radio was always shorthanded. We were always port and starboard. Watch on, watch off.
Okay.
And
How long was your watch?
we would stand watches like from breakfast to supper. And you'd kind of self-relieve at lunchtime. And then the next crew would come on in the evening till midnight. And then that shift that had the day shift would come back on at midnight and work till breakfast. And then they were off until supper, and they'd come back on. And they were, 8 12-hour shifts.
Okay. And you said radio was always shorthanded?
Always. I never went on a duty station that had a full complement of radiomen.
Why?
I don't know. We just, and in later years, we were classified as critical rate, where we got something like $50 a month extra for being in that particular rate.
So you went to the Far East on the Calvert?
Yeah, we went over there in 58, in June of 58, and came back in December of 58.
Where'd you go in the Far East?
First place we went was to Yokosuka. And as I recall going over, Joe, I was in the amphibious squadron. There were 5 or 6 ships. And our squadron did not have a doctor. And we had a guy on our ship that his appendix burst. And we knew by being in radio, I was privy to all the movements of the ships, because they would send out messages, telling where the ships were and everything. And we knew the Ranger was 600 miles in front of us, the USS Ranger aircraft carrier. But we didn't know the radio frequency they were operating on. So I went up to the signal bridge about midnight when this happened, and those big old beams they got on the flashing for those lights up there, I flashed beams off of clouds up there calling that Ranger, and they came back to me. And we were 600 miles using flashing light, and I asked for their radio frequency, and they gave me the designation what they were. So I went down Radio Shack and set up radio and talked to them and told them what we had, and they turned around to meet us, and we transferred the guy over to a high-speed transport, which was the USS Daishinko, and it took the guy to the carrier.
How'd you transfer him?
Highline. We didn't have our ships back then were the superstructure and everything, and high lines and the radio antennas and everything was set up to where the helicopter couldn't get close to our ship. So everything we did, we would highline the people over.
What's highline?
You would shoot a line over to that ship, and they would run up and tie it off somewhere kind of high on the ship. And then we had a little bucket that you would string a cable across, and a little bucket on this cable, and send a guy across in the cable,
Okay.
in the bucket.
Mm-hmm. How far apart are the ships when you do this?
Well, as close as you could get. Sometimes it'd be 40, 50 feet apart. Okay. Didn't want too close, because on the Daishinko, it was a small ship, and a wave would move it sideways pretty well.
And what was the name of that ship?
Daishinko. I couldn't spell it if I needed to. But It was the designated on it was an APD, and I don't remember the name of the number of that
Okay,
one.
okay. And what's your most vivid memory of the Calvert?
Of the Calvert, riding a Typhoon out of Yokosuka.
Is that Japan, Yokosuka?
Yokosuka, Japan.
Okay.
Yes, when we got to Japan, we went to Yokosuka and got our guy back from the Ranger. He survived the ordeal. And then we were there about a week. We were supposed to be there 3 or 4 weeks to get our ship repaired and everything like that. But the Typhoon was moving in, and they told us to go to sea. And of course, you had to steam into those things. And we actually lost mileage by steaming into that Typhoon. It backed us up something like 100 miles. And I went up at the signal bridge at one time when we were in that thing, and at the signal bridge they had a iron wall around the rail, and the bow of that ship would go down, and we were about 80 feet above water, and a solid stream of water would hit that wall. We'd have to duck down behind the wall, and just a solid sheet of water would hit that wall, and then you look back up, and it looked like the bow was taking off, going airborne. And our ship was 600-700 feet long.
Yeah.
But those storms really play havoc with you.
Many guys get seasick in that Typhoon? Many guys get seasick in that Typhoon?
Well, I don't know. We didn't in the Radio Shack. I remember that. But the thing about the Typhoon is that it was so dramatic that, I mean, everything you did was just banging into bulkheads and everything like that. You didn't have time to get seasick. But a lot of guys got seasick just normal sailing when you're out there just like this, you know. And I never did, but I sure wanted to several times.
Yeah. How were the meals on the Calvert?
How was the what?
The meals.
When we just had the crew on the ship, we ate pretty good. We had a crew of about 350 guys, but when we bring the Marines on for some kind of practice landing or so forth, they'd bring 1,800 Marines on board. And those guys would eat everything all the time. 2 days out with those guys, we're drinking powdered milk and eating powdered eggs and things like that. Because they, poor guys, I guess they never fed them when they were on the base.
Where would you take the Marines?
We would go out on landing exercises, like out of San Diego, you'd go over to San Clemente Island. And then in '59, we took a crew over to Hawaii and had landing exercises off Hawaii there. And I can remember I was on a tactical radio circuit with a 5-watt radio, 5-watt output radio, and I was directing the boat waves in. And a guy came on the radio and asked me if I would stop transmitting because I'm interfering with his operation. Now this 5 watts, sometimes you can't talk to a ship out there you can see. And I asked this guy, I told him I was the U.S. Navy, and I asked him who he was. He was a taxi cab dispatcher out of Tampa, Florida. Now I'm going 6,000 miles to talk to this guy, and I can't have a hard time talking to a ship out there. I can wave to the guys. And it's weird.
Yeah. Who was the captain of the Calvert?
It seemed like the guy's name was Morrell, M-O-R-R-E-L-L, but I don't remember it for sure.
Okay. Who was your division officer?
He was a lieutenant. He was a real good guy. Boy, I can't remember his name, but it's right on my tongue.
But he was a good guy.
He was a lieutenant. He was a Mustang.
Yeah.
And those guys always seemed to be the better officers. They weren't the Ivy League guys.
Yeah. What did you do in your off time on the ship when you weren't on duty?
Our off time was generally going down and hitting Iraq because you're going to be coming back on watch pretty soon. But in the evenings we would do cleanup and everything in our compartments and everything. But there wasn't a lot of leisure time for us on the ships.
Yeah.
And on that particular Calvert, we did not have a lot of things for recreation. And on the later ship, I was on the Guam, and they had a library and everything like that, and you go down and watch a movie, do things like that.
Now, on the Calvert, what were you told to do in case the ship was in trouble and sinking?
In case it was in trouble,
And sinking.
oh, well, if it's sinking, you want to get off of it. But we would go through drills, you know. We'd go into general quarters and practice what we would do in case that we should have to abandon ship. We had different stations to go to. And I can remember when we were going over to the Westpac that every time we'd go around the islands, Aleutian, not the Aleutians, but where they practiced with the atomic bomb, World War II.
Oh, yeah, that was Bikini.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, those islands.
And when we would go through that area, and we'd steam through there pretty regular, always out in the Pacific, we would go into general quarters. And then after general quarters, we'd go down and take what they call a decontamination shower. And then they would use a Geiger counter on us. And I didn't realize it until probably 15, 20 years ago. They were using us to see if there was still any radioactive materials out there. But and I never realized it. All the time I was in there, in the Navy, I never realized that we were just being used to see if there was any. But I guess it's, you know, you got some guys here you're paying 25 cents an hour for, you might as well use them.
Where was your general quarters?
My general quarters was Radio Shack.
Radio Shack, okay. Okay, good. And how long were you on the Calvert?
I was there 3 years.
3 years. What's your worst memory of the Calvert?
Probably a landing exercise we did in Okinawa. I was out in the boats, the wave commander of the boats. I was the radioman in that wave commander boat, and he would take each wave in and direct them in and then go back and pick up another wave. And we were out there for 65 hours without any kind of relief or anything. Once we'd go back, pick up another wave, we'd run up to a ship and ask them for something to eat, and they'd throw us down a bag of apples. And that's about all we ate for 65 hours was apples. And those are the worst times I had that I can recall.
How do you take the troops ashore? In a Higgins boat or what?
Yeah, we had two boats in the amphibians. They have the LCVP, which is a personnel. It's a flat bottom boat that the bow drops down.
Is that the Higgins boat?
I've never heard it called Higgins boat.
Okay.
We call them Papa boats.
Okay.
The LCVP, and then we have what they call the Mike boats. The LCMs was the bigger boat. The M meant machinery, like the Jeeps and things like that. We never transported a tank in. I don't know if it would hold a tank up. Usually the LSTs, the big ships that go in and drop down and have the tanks.
Okay. So when did you leave the Calvert?
I left the Calvert in October of 1960.
And you went where?
I went to the Naval Radio Station at Northwest Virginia. It was right on the North Carolina border, a real small town that's northwest. The only thing it had was a little convenience store and post office. The post office and the convenience store, and we were about 4 miles back out into the swamps from there.
And what'd you do there?
What we would do, we would receive messages from the ships in the Atlantic Ocean, and then we would transfer them up to the U.S. Naval Communications Station in Washington by our microwave system.
Okay.
And I was there for 2 years.
What'd you do? You said there was just a little store there, and
Well, at Northwest, and we were 35 miles from Norfolk and about 25 miles from Elizabeth City, North Carolina. And if we went into town, that's one of the two places we had to go. And we didn't have any military transportation going in and out. Every once in a while, a guy would go into Norfolk to pick up mail or something like that, but that didn't happen very often. Sometimes they'd deliver it to us. But if you didn't have a car out there, you just at other people's mercy on getting anywhere.
How many men were stationed there in Northwest Virginia?
It was a real small base. We had about 90 people,
Okay.
and it was about 12,000 acres. And the Northwest River ran through that base, and we could fish and hunt, things like that. They had big deer hunting thing going on there. But the guys, I never went deer hunting, but the guys that went deer hunting had to use shotguns. And they were told, if you run across a rattlesnake or anything, don't shoot them because you're going to spook all other animals. And the guys that were servicing our antennas out there one day came in on a flatbed truck and had one of the biggest rattlesnakes I ever saw. That told me, convinced me I need to stay on the road when I'm going back and forth to my duty station. Our receiving station was about 3/4 of a mile from the barracks.
Okay. And what was your average day there? How long was your watch at Northwest Virginia?
Our watches there that was one of the better duties. We were what to call a 3-section watch. You would stand watches one day, then you're off 2 days, and you had a lot of liberty time on your 2 days off. Mm-hmm. Those are the 2 years, the best 2 years I had in the Navy.
So when you're on liberty, where'd you go?
Well, you had to go to Norfolk or Elizabeth City, North Carolina. And there was a little town just south of the border called Moyock, North Carolina. And you were Army,
Yes.
and they trained those guys down there, the Blackwater guys, later on that went over Iraq. They trained those in Moyock, and I didn't know that until a couple of years ago. We hired a police officer for Copan that was stationed at Moyock, North Carolina one time. And I told him, I said, I bet you and I are the only 2 guys in the state that know anything about Moyock, North Carolina. But down there at that base, everything was volunteer fire department, everything. Whoever answered the phone call in the fire department was the driver. You take off, and everybody else jumped on the truck or followed you in the cars to wherever they were going.
So you had a volunteer fire department?
Yeah.
Okay. When you went to town, what was the reaction of the local people to you?
Well, sailors usually, they go to the strips where the bars are. And that, I wasn't really old enough to drink at that time, so I would go to a movie, something like that. Actually, I liked the base well enough. We had a little EM club on the base, and I liked that, but very rarely would I go into Norfolk.
Okay. Any USO shows come through there?
No, not there.
Wasn't big enough.
No, it wasn't big enough.
So you were there for 2 years.
2 years.
Then where'd you go?
Then I went to Sidi Aia, Morocco, out in the Sahara Desert.
What was the name?
Sidi Aia, Citiyaahia.
Morocco.
I was the supervisor of a top secret radio relay station and cryptographer. Mm-hmm. And our mission there was to receive any messages from ships in the Atlantic or stateside and relay them to all military installations throughout Europe and Northern Africa and Asia.
Okay.
And I was there for 2 years. That was the worst duty. We had what we would work rotating shifts, midnights, eves, and days. And you go 7 each, and then you could go to town. Once every 27 days, we got to go to town. And we had to be back to base by midnight. And the only way to get to town was ride the bus. We were 60 miles from Kenitra, Morocco.
Kenitra.
There was a naval air station at Kenitra. I never went there. When we'd go into town, the only place we could go was at the USO place in quarters in Kenitra. Mm-hmm. And you couldn't go down the streets or anything. That's the only, I spent 2 full years and never wore a uniform. We weren't allowed to wear uniforms over there because we weren't supposed to be there. They, Kennedy had signed an agreement with the King Husan or something like that back at that time that gave them hundreds of thousands of dollars a day for us to be over there, but we couldn't wear uniforms. One time during a relief of personnel, we got a break where we had a couple of days off. Another guy and I got on the train and went to Casablanca. We got off the train and a couple of guys walked up to us and asked us if we were military. Of course, they could tell by our shoes. And we told them yes, told them where we was from. They said, get back on the train and get back to your base immediately. We're on worldwide alert. President Kennedy's just been assassinated. So that was my only time off that I could go anywhere, and I couldn't make it. We got off the train and got on the sidewalk and back on the next train going the other way. And I always wanted to go to Casablanca, but never made it.
When you went to the Kenitra, whatever, what was the reaction of the local people to you?
The reaction wasn't, we never mingled with the people very much. There was one guy that would come in and work in the USO building, and he would talk to a couple of us, and we got to be friends with him, and he invited us to his home for supper one night. And 2 or 3 of us went over there, but that's the only time I was ever out of the USO club down on the streets. And they told us, if you go on the street, go in a group. Don't go by yourself.
Why?
People didn't like us. And I don't know why. Those guys that would come on our base to work, we'd get along with them real well. Because they were paid, and people didn't get paid over there. It was a very poor country, and the only people who got the money was the king and his clan. And they were getting a bunch.
So you were there for 2 years.
I was there for 2 years.
What kind of type of quarters did you have there?
We had just regular barracks. They weren't too bad. And we had a little EM club on the base and a PX that we could go over and buy some stuff, not very much. And thing I can remember is our beer was Schlitz and Falstaff. And it was the old tin cans that had formaldehyde lining, and you pop one of those cans and you take a drink of it and you got a mouthful of formaldehyde. You can swallow the beer and chew the formaldehyde. Then they started bringing in the German beer, the Heineken and Tuborg, and that was pretty good beer.
Yes.
So, didn't have much time to drink it though, because we were always on watch there.
Why?
Well, again, we were just short-handed, and it was you'd stand there. You would stand 9 days. You would do the evening shift. Then 9 days you would do the day shift. Then 9 days you do the midnight shift, going back from one shift to the next. And then you get off. You could go to town, but you had to be back by midnight because our restriction was midnight. Then you go back to work the next morning, and you start that 9 days all over again. 27 days.
So from Morocco, where'd you go?
I came to a APA by the name of Montreal, Montrail. It was APA 213, and it was down in the Caribbean when I got back to Norfolk, and they took me down there on a DC 130, that the old cargo planes, and they took me down to the Caribbean and dropped me off so I could get on that ship. I was only on there a few months, and then I went to the USS Guam. They were building it in the shipyards in Philadelphia. I went up there in the fall, and in the spring we put the ship in commission.
So you're a plank owner?
A plank owner, yes.
Okay.
And we went back down to Norfolk to load up with ammo and fuel and get it degaused and everything. And had about half a load of fuel, no ammo whatsoever on there. And they told us to get to Santo Domingo, that the USS Okinawa was was one of the first LPHs. It was an old converted aircraft escort plane, escort ship. And had some kind of a gas leak on that ship, and they had to take it back out to sea. And our duty there was, they was having that problem. This was in '65, you know, they had that uprising down there. That our mission was to steam 5 miles off the coast, 100 miles up the coast, turn around and come back. And we did that for 30 days. And at the end of that 30 days, everybody on that ship was ready to go over and take that island. But I read in my VFW book about 3 or 4 years ago that the guys down in San Domingo was under this rules of engagement, don't shoot unless you're shot at. And they said that the guys in these buildings would shoot at them, they would take cover, and the guy would walk out of the building and walk down the street carrying his machine gun, and they couldn't shoot at him. He'd get down there out of sight or run behind the car and start shooting back at them. And that made me sick to realize that. And I knew we lost some guys down there because, you know, being in the communications, I was privy of everything that came about.
Yeah. The Santo Domingo is located where?
It's down in the Caribbean, it's Haiti, Santo Domingo and Haiti, and it's right east of Puerto Rico or Cuba, down in that area.
Okay. And you were down there, you say, how many days?
We were down there, we were down there for 30 days, just
30
back
days.
and forth, and then the Okinawa came back in and relieved us. We came back up to Norfolk and got all of our, outfitted our ship.
Now, what kind of ship is the Guam?
The Guam was an LPH, it's a helicopter carrier.
Okay.
And there again, we ate good. That was, our berthing was air conditioned. We lived a good life on the Guam. And then we'd bring a couple thousand Marines on board, and everything would start over again. But that particular ship, I don't really remember Marines being on there too much. We had 2 or 3 exercises. Well, when we took it, a shakedown cruise down out of Gitmo, we had Marines on. And we took a detachment of Marines from Guantanamo down to, it's a little island in the Caribbean down there. Gosh, Joe, I don't remember that place. But we took the Marines down there, and the first night of Liberty, all the married sailors and Marines could go on board. And the Marines took their family. Those that had their families with them in Gitmo could take them down there. The next night, the single guys got to go on Liberty, but most of the places in town were closed down to sailors by that time because the other guys just told them they didn't want the rest of us down there. So all we could do is walk the streets. So, but,
You call the name of the island?
no. Boy, I tell you, there's a lot of scam communications coming out of that island now, out of Florida.
Scam communications.
Like telephone scam calls and things like that. You want a bunch of money, just go send me $1,000 and I'll send you a $50,000 check. Yeah, those kind of things coming out of down there. Boy, I thought I'd never forget that island, but it seemed like Kingston was the name of the town.
Jamaica?
Jamaica, yeah.
Okay.
Jamaica.
Yes. Okay.
We were down there 2 days, and then we brought Marines back to Guantanamo.
Okay. What helicopters did you have on the ship?
And I can remember one real plane was the Huey.
Okay.
That was the big transport deal, and we had some smaller helicopters on there, and I don't know what they were. They were probably some gunships or something like that, just escort.
You had the Chinook with the big double rotors?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got you can't tell much, but that's the helicopter sitting on the deck.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, those are Hueys. Yeah, because I was on Hueys in Vietnam.
I thought you might have been that.
Now, where were your quarters on the Guam?
We were a couple of decks down, and we had it set up there where it was only 2 bunks high, and on the other ships we were 6 high on canvas racks, you know. But these were regular, nice wide bunks. They were about 30 inches wide with 3-inch mattresses on them, and they were comfortable, and they were just too high. So a guy could jump up on the top one, and you could just lay down on the middle one. And,
were you still in the Radio Shack?
I still radioman, and on the Guam, of course, I was the leading radioman on the Guam, and on the Montreal also. And by that time, I was E6, and I was the leading radioman. And we had a lot more modern day equipment on the Guam. We had our transmitters set up with sideband and things like that. And we had a machine called a MUX machine, and you could take a sideband signal and split it up into about 5 or 6 different frequencies and transmit to 5 or 6 different locations with that one signal coming in with the sideband.
What kind of machine was it?
It was called MUX.
MUX.
And we only used it one time on the couple of years I was on that ship. And it would, and I don't ever remember using it in tactical situations, but we just set it up one time and used it. And
okay. So you go aboard the Guam, where does the ship go?
Where did it go? First thing we did, we went to the shakedown at Gitmo.
Now, what is a shakedown cruise?
It's once you go in the yards for an overhaul or put the ship in commission, you got to go down and go through all of these wartime games in different situations and everything like that, and how your ship reacts to it and things like that. And most of the guys on that particular ship was they had a lot of sea duty previously, and they were pretty well checked out on everything. We came out with flying colors on the shakedown cruises, the greenies and everything that were.
Okay. So after the shakedown cruise, where do you go?
Well, we went back to Norfolk, and we did a Caribbean cruise on the Guam, but we never went to any place very long, just St. Thomas, St. Croix, and we weren't down there long enough to like the other ships, we'd go down there for 3 or 4 months at a time. This ship just was down there and come back, and we never did a whole lot on the Guam.
Okay. Where's home port? Where is home port for the Guam?
Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay, okay.
And I got off the Guam, I went to the Chicaskia.
How long were you on the Guam?
2 years.
2 years. And did the Guam just stay in the Atlantic?
Yes.
Okay.
And it never took an overseas trip while I was there, other than the Caribbean.
Okay, okay. And then from the Guam, you went on
I
Washington?
went to the USS Chicaskia. That's Chicaskia. And it was a fleet oiler, AO 54.
What'd you do on it?
I was the leading radioman on there, and it was an old World War II ship. And we did take a crew to, or take a trip to the Caribbean in it. We were, just as we passed the Straits of Gibraltar, we got word to steam plank speed, which on that ship was 12 knots. Our steaming speed was about 8. walking speed. And we were supposed to steam flank speed to the eastern med that Israel had just attacked one of our spy ships. And that was the Liberty, if you recall, where we were over there in their waters doing, this was in the time of the 67 war, as you recall. Israel had busted the codes of the Arabs, the Arabic nations, and knew where all these guys were set up to attack Israel. So they were putting all their troops in position, and they were going to have a surprise attack, and they did that. But then we had a spy ship, our spy ship was sitting out there. We busted the Israeli code, and we knew what Israel was planning. Israel realized somebody busted their code, so they come out searching, and they found a ship out here, not flying the U.S. flag. Why, I don't know. But they torpedoed that ship, and they killed 30, 35 guys of they were, at that time they were called CTs, communication technicians. We called them gumshoes. They were the secret part of our communications operations. And the USS America, the aircraft carrier, was a brand new ship, and it had a fleet. I mean, it was over there in their squadron, and it had planes airborne to go attack Tel Aviv 2 or 3 times, and they called them back. And we escaped a big operation there. But once Israel realized that it was a U.S. ship, then they stopped their attack and went in to help our guys.
Yeah.
But
was that during the 6-Day War?
that was the 6-Day War in '67.
67. Okay.
And they knew right where the Arabs were, and they set up, and they attacked those guys first, and then the end of the war. And
so, where are your quarters on the, what's the name of the ship?
Circassia. We were 2 or 3 decks down. We were pretty low on the Circassia, and one thing about the Circassia is we had no below deck passageways. Everything was oil containers, oil vats throughout the ship, or not oil vats, but fuel vats. We carried a lot of avgas, high octane gas, and JP5 jet fuel, which is just a high grade diesel. And at that time, a lot of our ships are switching over to diesel. We refueled a light cruiser, I don't remember the name, one day, and he loaded up with diesel. And when that ship took off, it sounded like one of these airplanes, a jet airplane taking off. And the bow, that ship was 700 feet long or longer. And the bow of that ship would come up out of the water and cruise out here about a mile, then it would level off, just like a bass boat planing out. Well, those suckers were fast, and they were quick.
So you refuel ships at sea?
Yes.
Okay.
We refueled, the USS Saratoga was over there at the time. I guess the America left, the Saratoga replaced it. And we were refueling the Saratoga one time, and when you refuel aircraft carrier, they had helicopters flying behind us. And when we have a full complement of oil or fuel on our ship, our deck was right almost sea level. And a guy would be over there hooking these lines up, and a wave would come across that deck and hit him and put him out into the sea. Chopper would pick him up and bring him over and set him down on one side. He'd run over, and pretty soon he's out there again. And one guy went over 3 times in one fueling operation.
How do you refuel a ship at sea?
You use big fuel lines and pumps from our fuel tanks, depending on what they have. And those aircraft carriers, at that time, there wasn't a lot of jets. There was a lot of prop planes. We would, at avgas, really high octane, we would pump it over there.
How do you get it over there?
In a line, a hose,
How
maybe.
do you get the line over there?
Oh, well, here you would high line, take your shotgun and shoot a shell over there, and they'd grab that line and drag 2 or 3 bigger ones until you got something heavy enough that would hold this fuel line. Then you pull it across, And we were refueling in Saratoga one time, and I was standing back on the fantail of our ship at that time, and we got word to break away immediately and steam full steam straight ahead. And the Saratoga backed down and swung to the port, and I was on, that bow came over our ship like this, and I'm looking up at that thing going like that. Oh, man, and what happened, a French tanker was steaming, and when you're refueling, you got your flags up telling you're refueling and everybody stays away from you. This tanker was coming right toward that aircraft carrier. And he told us to go straight ahead. He's getting away from this tanker. If anybody's going to take on this tanker, it's going to be us. So I ran to the radio shack, and about the time I got to the radio shack, that French tanker had made a sharp left turn and was steaming. You could almost shake hands with the guys on the deck of that other ship. If those two tankers would have collided out there in that Mediterranean, it'd be a desert now, probably. But that was one of the scariest things I believe I ever did when I was in there. Back when I was on the Calvert, we were in the Formosa Straits, and back at that time, China was shooting over Formosa, and you could hear them big shells going over. And I said, man, I sure hope those guys shoot straight.
Did you get to Vietnam?
I never did go to Vietnam.
Okay.
I volunteered one time when I was on the Guam. I volunteered to go to Vietnam to run the LSTs up and down the rivers. And on Christmas Day, we was sitting down at San Juan, Puerto Rico, and I'm laid out on this deck getting some sun, and the guys came up and told me that the psychiatrist wanted to talk to me, that they got to report down there that I volunteered to go to Vietnam, and I got to go talk to the psychiatrist. And I said, well, I don't want any part of that, so tear those papers up. So that was my trip to Vietnam, as close as I got.
Had to see a psychiatrist?
Yeah, I guess they thought the guy's nuts for volunteering for it, and probably was.
And you were on the Shakaskia how long?
I went on there in the fall of '66, and I got off. We went to the Med in June '67, and I got off in December '67.
Okay.
So I was on there a little over a year.
Okay. And then when you got off of Shakaskia, what'd you do?
Came home.
Came home.
Before the ship went overseas, I came home for 10 days. I met this real pretty blonde-headed gal with 3 kids, and I decided that, well, actually, from that point on, the Navy never crossed my mind. And I was due to get out in September. And when my discharge date came, of course, we were in the Med, and they told me, said, we don't have a relief for you. You're going to have to stay on the ship till you get back to the States. So that was the longest 4 months, from September to December, the longest 4 months I ever spent, I believe.
So you spent, what, 10 years in the Navy?
I was just a month short of 11.
You only had 9 more years to go.
I know it, but I came back, and I had a couple of years that I was going back and retained my rate, with being the critical rate. But my wife's kids decided they didn't want to leave their friends or anything, and then I wasn't going to be one of these guys. I saw how military married people operated, and I didn't really want to be any part of that.
Is that here in Bartlesville?
That was in Bartlesville, yeah.
Okay. What's your wife's name?
Her name was Leda Freisinger. She was a feeler, Leda Feeler, and she married a guy named Freisinger, and then they divorced. And then.
So after the Navy, where'd you go to work?
I went to. I got out in December, and in January I went to work at National Zinc Plant and stayed there till '02.
What'd you do at the smelters?
Yeah.
What'd you do out there?
Gosh, I did a lot of different things out there. The first thing I was doing was working in the pottery, making brick and things for fireproof brick and things like they would line the furnaces with and everything like that. And then I ran a thing called the jig crusher and ran a lot of their equipment. Later on, I was a crane operator, and then in '93 they shut most of the operations down at the plant, and I went to what they called Equiday. That was the little plant over there recycling zinc. And actually, our job was to recycle lead chloride. This stuff came out of the flues of the steel mills up in the Midwest. And we had an operation in Monaca, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania declared this lead chloride a hazardous material, and they couldn't process it in Pennsylvania. So they came down to Oklahoma, talked to the leaders in Oklahoma, and they said, no, you can bring it down here. It's not hazardous. They built the plant to bring it down here, and the first shipment, Oklahoma told them they couldn't bring any more because it had hazardous material. Well, they sued Oklahoma, and they won the case. So we reprocessed lead chloride and made a lot of money doing it. We got a lot of zinc sulfate that they send to animal food producers, a lot of copper residue that we would send out to the copper plants and everything. And we then built a little thing called a gray circuit that filtered out copper at that time. And we had a market in East St. Louis. The plant manager and I went up there and talked to them, and they told us we could ship that to them, and they want to buy this stuff from us. The leaders of the company in Pennsylvania called this plant manager down there and said, you can't do that. We're shipping that stuff up to Colorado, and they're burying it up there. And I told that guy, I said, you know, one of these days, somebody they would go up and mix that copper with cement and pour it down these canyons. And there's a lot of toxic material up in Colorado in those caverns or those canyons that someday somebody's going to go up there and find that. They're going to tell this company, get your jackhammers and go up there and retrieve this stuff. And
You ever worked the furnaces at the smelters?
no, I didn't work the furnaces. I worked in the pottery, setting pots into the kilns out in the furnaces. And I'd go in there and clean up the zinc residue and so forth that they would leave after those guys. I just wasn't made right to walk up to a $1,500 or $1,600 degree temperature thing and shake hands with it. Those old boys were tough.
Yeah. How long do you work at the smelters?
35 years.
Then you retired.
And retired.
When did you retire?
I retired in the February of '02, and then in the fall, August, I think, of '06, I went to work at the Nutrition Center in Dewey, the Washington-Newada County Nutrition Center that delivered meals to different places in the counties.
What's at the smelters now, that thing out there now? What's at the smelters now?
Actually, there's nothing out there right now. There is a guy on duty out there that was a hazardous waste site, and that's what all that mound is out there with that grass. They, instead of recycling that gophite, and then they could have recycled it and got a product out of it. They just covered it up with dirt, planted grass over it, and called it good. EPA says that's okay.
I used to play in that stuff when I was a kid.
I know it. When I was a kid, we'd go all over that prairie out there and dig stuff up. The big blue building, I don't know if there's anything in there now, but that's where they used to store the lead chloride that they would ship in that we didn't process quick enough. We go up there and take it on down.
The sign says zinc recycling on it. Yeah.
Do what?
The sign out there says zinc recycling.
Okay, that right now it changed to it's a AZ or American Zinc Recycling, and that changed over to about 3 or 4 years ago. They moved from Monaca, Pennsylvania, down into North Carolina someplace, and we had life insurance. When I retired, we had negotiated full medical benefits and lifetime life insurance. A year and a half after I retired, they took that from us, and the union wouldn't represent us, and so we lost it. And But we could pay our life insurance, and it was something like 32 cents a thousand for life insurance. Well, I kept that up, and then last year, they came back and told us instead of $62 a year, it's $397 a year now. And the same thing happened on the medical insurance. When they took that away, they told us we could keep it. It would be $675 a month. So we kept that for a year. Then the next year, they didn't want to mess with us anymore. I guess they raised the premiums to $2,900. So we dropped out, and everybody else did. So the industry has a way of mistreating you while you're making a living for them, and then really mistreating you after you're gone from them.
Yeah. Okay. Would you join the Navy again?
Yes, in a heartbeat I would.
Okay. I'd like to do a word association. I'll give you some words and you give me your reaction. The first one is boot camp.
A change in lifestyle and discipline, a place for discipline.
Radio school.
Stressful.
USS Calvert.
Good times on the Calvert. I was young and didn't know much better.
Yokosuka.
Yokosuka, Japan was, the people over there were friendly. I remember them being real friendly people at that time.
Northwest Virginia.
Desolate, best duty I had, and almost unrestricted.
Morocco.
I could tell you one word, but it undesirable.
USS Montreal.
I was on there a short time. I met some good buddies there, and I still remember some of them, but I don't have much to say about the Montreal.
USS Guam.
Good duty on the Guam. It was a modern ship, and one thing about the Guam, you kind of got to set things up like you wanted them. You didn't have to go in and take over something that somebody else did. You got to set it up like you wanted it.
USS Shikaskia.
Hazardous duty. We didn't, but there was a fire on that ship before I got on it that a bunch of guys died. An aviation gas tank exploded, or gas bunker exploded, and everybody was a firefighter on that ship.
U.S. Navy.
A real good experience, and I would do it all over again in a minute.
John F. Kennedy.
Well, I really liked John F. Kennedy because he was a military guy, and he was a leader. I really liked him.
Lyndon Johnson.
Questionable on Lyndon Johnson. I have, now, being a person out of the Democratic Party, Lyndon Johnson did great for the Democratic Party. We had the Older Americans Act, the Civil Rights Act, and things like that come under him. But as a president, well, to be frank with you, I think he had a little bit of influence on John Kennedy's death. I'll never, because his buddy, Billy Solestis down there, and I just can't get that out of my mind. That
Richard Nixon.
scumbag.
How do you want to be remembered?
As a person that's concerned about my country and my people, I really feel like the poor people of this country, when you get poor, you kick them. And we tend to treat the rich as rich and the poor as dirt. Once a person gets down, you don't help him up, you go over and kick him. If he's rich, you give him all the benefits.
Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I will tell you, I love your mother and dad. I didn't know you too much back then, but I've got to know you after I got out of the military. But
Well, Pete, this is an excellent interview.
thank you, Joe.
I want to thank you for your service and thank you for the interview.
And I thank you for your service.
And again, today is January 15th, 2020. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview with Pete Elkins in Copan, Oklahoma. Thank you.
Okay.